Good evening. Welcome to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals. Delighted to be joined tonight by George, by Mitch, by Stu, by Kevin. And we've got an hour to talk about Newcastle United's result against Crystal Palace, whether Claire Bolden is going to sign for Newcastle before the transfer window closes, why Kieran Dyer talks an absolute load of codswallop. I'm sure there's plenty to talk about tonight in the next hour. And as always, if you've got questions you want to ask in the chat, get them up on the screen. We'll do our best to answer them. But George, you and Kevin joined us yesterday for Match Day Live, and it was a one-sided game, George. But we just couldn't find the the goals to put them to bed, could we?
No, I think. And Fabian Shaw showed what he thought about it at the end when he kicked the ball over the top of the stand into the Crystal Palace streets. He was obviously didn't think too much of it. It was disappointing, but on the other hand, is that we're not going to have the games that where we play like that and we don't score. Not many anyway. I hope. The other, having reflected on it and looked at what people were saying afterwards, I lost total respect for Vieira yesterday. His comments were just beyond the pale. You know, if that's going to be the standard of commentary when his team gets battered like that, then he's not the man I thought he was. I mean, to say his only real comment was, well, that's what happens when you throw millions at it. Well, I'm sorry. If I very quick after I heard that, I quickly tried to add up his team, and actually, I think his team that faced us at the kickoff was worth nearly 100 million more than our team was at the kickoff. So you know how on earth he gets that's how you throw millions at it. What's he going to say when he comes against Chelsea and all the others? Nah, Patrick, I'm sorry, you went down a million miles in my estimation yesterday. The other thing was that how did Crystal Palace? Now, bear in mind, I watched the game without a live feed, so I didn't see the game on the day. I've had to catch up with it. How on earth did they finish with 10 men? There were 11 men on the field. At least two of them should have been in the stand. One of them before half time. The bloke that clattered Botman and then clattered Wilson. I mean, he should have been off on his way to an early battle long before that. And then there was another one who had it niggle at Miggy. How did they stay on? It just beggars belief that VAR didn't interrupt on that. But never mind. We're in terms of game management and all the rest of it, we were streets ahead of them. And then, as I say, having watched, as you lads probably have watched this game at Arsenal today, is that they're all waxing lyrical about Manchester United and Arsenal, and we made both teams look ordinary. So you know where does that go into the equation? So yesterday, yes, the result was slightly disappointing. There's no pretending about that. But on the other hand, it's another clean sheet. It's another step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. So little bit of disappointment, but another good performance. I mean, there were some heroes out there. Joe Linton, I thought yesterday, probably could be wrong, but probably had one of his best games ever for Newcastle United yesterday. I thought absolutely fantastic. I couldn't believe it when I seen it on Sky, the replay. And then the other irritating, annoying thing is to have to listen to bloody Kieran Dyer on Sky was just painful. You remember when he ended up in the police cell and soon as had to get him out? I think one of the local bobbies has gone in the cell and given him a good beating because he hates Newcastle United. He cannot stand it. So I don't know where he gets it from. It might be that. Maybe he got a good, allegedly got a good height.
He doesn't get many commentary jobs. I just think, I mean, we'll come to it, I'm sure, a little bit later in the show because I just want to talk about the game. But I think ultimately for me, I think he's I just don't think he gets many TV jobs. And like a lot of people, he looks for controversy to get the word spread around that he's on TV, etc. I just didn't understand it. But Mitch, it's 15 games now, unbeaten for Newcastle.
Yeah.
Wonderful that. It's a record for an English manager, beating Alan Pardew. I always chuckle when I see that. But and a Premier League goal not scored past that wonderful defence and goalkeeper since November.
Yeah, and Nick Pope yesterday showed why he's a quality keeper. He had nothing to do, not a thing to do. And then when he was called on, what a reaction save. That takes a lot of mental strength to remain focused like that, to pull a save like that off as well, on top. After you've done the square root and that all for most of the game. I thought that reaction save was class. We speculated a couple of weeks ago when people were saying, well, we're going to get a sticky patch or a bad run of form, whether we're actually in that now. And I think yesterday may add weight to that potential argument.
Yeah.
And if we're in our bad patch now, we're still grinding results out. And that's the marker of a top team. And so I think I would be worried yesterday if we weren't making the chances. We are. On another day, one of those chances goes in, and it's a different game script. And we've said that about a couple of games now. So I think I'd be more concerned if we weren't making the chances rather than making them and not taking them. And the other thing that came out of the game yesterday is I think we need to rethink what we're doing with corners.
Yeah,
for a team with such physicality, I can see what they've been trying to do, creating different angles of delivery. But teams look like they've got that worked out now, and that they're making it difficult for them to do the little 1-2s and the quick corners. We maybe need to go back to basics. Something like what Trippier did when we were at Tranmere and we needed to dig a win out. Just that flat, high-speed delivery, which happened to be then onto Wood's head, who's now gone, obviously. But I think there's something to be done on the training ground with these corners after yesterday. And I think that's a really good comment. Yeah, we're creating the chances, and we're gonna give somebody a real good 1,000 this season.
Absolutely.
When everything goes our way. You can see it coming. So in general, would I have taken a point before the game? I'd always take a point away from home. Thinking glass half full, I'd always take a point away from home. The winning run continues, the clean sheets continue. And if that's not a foundation we can look at and say, hey, we're building on this, then I don't know what people want.
Stu, there's always going to be complaints on social media. Everyone's got different opinions, from my perspective, I tend to keep off social media the night of a game because it just becomes an absolute farce at times. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm with Mitch. I've got to be perfectly honest. It's a clean sheet. It keeps the unbeaten run going. We're cementing our place in the Champions League. That's another point ahead of Spurs. 6 points ahead of Spurs now, level on games. There's nothing to complain about.
Definitely not. I said at the start of the season, I think we would finish fifth, and it was laughed at. But now I'd be disappointed if we finished fifth. As you said, we're 6 points clear of Tottenham, and might as well be 7 points with the goal difference we've got. And we don't look like conceding anytime soon. It's going to be one of those T-shirts that John will put out. I'm old enough to remember when Nick Pope conceded a goal. It's getting ridiculous now, isn't it? How long it's been, but they're so comfortable with the ball defensively, and I think we have to take it as a mark of respect. The more feared we are, the more the opposing teams sit back and make it harder for us to break them down, and that's the conundrum that we have to solve, and I'm sure we will. Whether it's with the existing players or we add one or two to it. But then it's the case of who do you take out and does it change the whole ethos of the team? He's quite clear he's got trust in that starting 11, and the Sheffield Wednesday game quite easily showed that there isn't much behind that. Excuse me. So there will be tough decisions to be made. regarding if we ought to improve the team. And anyhow, did refer to that in one of his press conferences recently, didn't he? He says it'll have to be a really high quality player that we'll bring in. So I put a little tweet out yesterday. It was interesting to see that our much vaunted number 10 for Leicester was back in the squad, Madison, and it's quite likely that I think we'll still bid for him. I really do. But whether they let him go before the window closes is not a different matter. But I can see us getting someone else in. And you know what? There's always a comparisons between this team and the Keegan's team. But I think both are very, very similar. The era then, it was like a fairy tale where you knew it was going to stop eventually. Where this, it doesn't have any sense of ending anytime soon, does it? You know, it's going to be continuous. Yeah. And maybe I'm just getting old and it's sentimental and that. But honestly, this team is, you know, that they've got the financial power behind them. You know that it's only going to improve. And the fact that it's only the dodgy goal against Liverpool that stopped us being unbeaten all season. You've seen how much even now they're still waxing lyrical about the Arsenal team that did it 20 years ago. You know, we were a dodgy ref away from doing the same so far. So I've got no problems. We can go to Southampton, win comfortably, because I don't think they'll be expecting to get a result over 2 legs against us. So I'm hoping that they'll play a weakened team. Then we go beat them again at home. Then we've got Bournemouth, haven't we? And we owe them. So there's quite a lot to, well, there's more than quite a lot. There's a huge amount to look forward to supporting this team. And there will be little bumps in the road. But if a bump in the road is a clean sheet away from home, then let's have more bumps if that's the case. It's the first time, I think, in about 3 or 4 months that we went under 2 points a game ratio. But win the next one, we're back to level. So that brings us to, 78 points, if my maths are right. Is it 76 points at the end of the season? That'll get us in the Champions League. So there's not much needs to be fixed, if anything at all. Trust Eddie, trust the process. And I think it was a hard-earned draw. We battered them, but we could quite easily have conceded, and we didn't. One shot on target they had. And the game before, Fulham had 0 shots on target. That's the sign of a team that's only going to get better.
As you'll be able... Arsenal should have scored there. That was a wonderful save by De Gea. Like, it was point blank as well. That was going in all day. 7 minutes to go, 2-2 still, Arsenal, Manchester United. Kev, we watched the game together yesterday, mate. You were slightly behind because of where you are, but you still saw what I saw and what thousands around the world saw. Newcastle United, 78% possession. And as I've already mentioned, 15 corners. The game should have been out of sight. It wasn't. Sometimes you get games like that, but for me personally, I'm still happy, and for all the reasons I've already stated and the rest of the lads have stated. 15 games unbeaten, another clean sheet. God, I remember the days when we used to concede 3 or 4 going to a game in London on a regular basis. We never used to win in London, for God's sake, for years on end. Yeah. But in essence, Kev, it's another point in the bag. It's another point towards the Champions League positions.
Exactly, mate. And like the lads have said, pointing away from home in the Premier League's a valuable point. Again, I quoted Steve Bruce yesterday. We're just accruing points as we get further up the division, and it just cements our right to be there. The desire, the determination not to concede is a big thing in the Premier League. Yes, we could talk all day about the chances created and my thing about the attacking third play, which has got to be a little bit more crisper, a bit more sharper. But again, that comes, like Mitch said, it's, playing away from home against Palace, I'll snap your hands off, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, it's just then what everybody said is where we are based on hard work and playing the right way. But again, it's just if this is a purple patch and we're having a little bump in the road, well, I'll quite happily take that bump in the road. So yeah, happy. Just move on to Tuesday, like I said yesterday, and we'll go down to Southampton, smash them.
I'm not sure whether you've seen the Kieran Dyer remarks, Kevin. I'll start with you on this. From my perspective, I listened to what he had to say, and I just get the feeling he was saying it for sound bites, so that he knew that it would be picked up. by the social media platforms, and he knew that Newcastle fans would bite and react, because everybody knows we'll bite and react on social media. But more or less saying that Botman, was at Newcastle and he'll develop when he goes to a bigger and better club. I mean, you just ignore things like that, don't you?
Well, I've seen it. I didn't really look too much into it because I think it just talks nonsense, to be fair. Like you said, it's clickbait, it's a soundbite. I just listened to the 10-second thing, what I seen on Twitter earlier today when I woke up. And, he's developing now. He doesn't have to go to a bigger club. He's developing probably in a better place now than he would when he goes to, say, the Big Six, because who knows, he might not even get a game. But he's developing in the right team at the right time for his age. He's 22, right? 22, 23, something like that. So if he goes to a bigger side, well, are you going to develop the right ways in the pathways, what we talk about in the game? Are you going to reach those levels at a different club? I don't think he will. I think he's in comfortably one of the best centre-halves in the Premier League already is where he is. And let's keep him around and see where he's going to go. So where his development track will take him. However, if he does go, it's going to cost a pretty penny for him to go somewhere, though.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he's there. Look, Stu, this is ridiculous by Kieran Dyer. I really don't understand the guy and his mentality. We paid him for best part of 8 years. We stuck up for him during one of the most embarrassing scenes I've ever seen as a Newcastle fan, when he had a fight in the middle of the pitch with another one of the players. Both of them should have been stuck on the transfer list for me for that. I thought it was absolutely farcical for those two. But he's just doing this for clickbait and for soundbite. Surely to God, he's just talking absolute rubbish.
Yes, it's uneducated and it's non-factual. So if he's doing it to get on, whether it be radio channels or TV channels, anyone who's in a position to employ him will think the guy's talking out his backside. Why would I even want to associate him with our brand? It's like when he's on with Stunis and he calls him boss all the time. It's sickening, isn't it? But if that's our biggest complaint of how the season's going, if you want to flip that into reverse, yesterday Gorilla Gloves was actually saying what George said earlier, that Palace should have been down to 10 men. And that was at half time. And for him to say that again in favour of Newcastle shows it really should have been. And he replayed it 3 or 4 times, and he was getting on at Andy Gray. He was saying to him, "Look, tell me that's not a free kick and a yellow card." And Andy Gray, "Yeah, it is. So why is he still on the pitch? Newcastle should be facing 10 men now." And I was taken aback by the fact he was vehemently arguing our case, but he was right. They should have been sent off. And it's the same with. Use the words uneducated and non-factual. That's exactly the same as George pointed out about what Vieira said. It's cheap, it's lazy, and it shows jealousy more than anything else.
Yeah,
he should be.
3-2 to Arsenal. Sorry, Stu.
Steve, man.
I'm still not up to it yet. I'm on 86 or 88 minutes. I don't know. But Vieira showed that his lack of class. And if you look at Eddie Howe, he always praises the opposition and says how it's a tough game, etc., etc. But his main thing is about his team. And I think all that Vieira's done is trying to track the fact that his team had to sit and defend for the best part of 90 minutes, only one shot at goal. The game before, in midweek, they played Man United, and they had a lot more chances against them. But Man United are the third team in this title race. So we're just going to have to get used to it. In fact, it actually suits us. Let's keep on doing our work under the radar. Let them take cheap shots, because that's all they are. They're embarrassing themselves when they do that.
VAR on this, but I'm telling you now, that is not offside. Like, if that's offside, I'll be very surprised. When the ball was played, he's checking it. We'll come to you, Mitch. Not sure if you've got your eyes on the TV. Or not.
I haven't, mate. But
all right, okay. Well, keep an eye on that. But what's your take on Kieran Dyer?
He's thick as mint. He's thick as a butcher's block, and he's going to say anything he wants because he's seen his mate Jennings make a career on the BBC out of making stuff up. Jennings has made things up about his career at Newcastle, his career at Tottenham, and gets away with it and doesn't get fact-checked and doesn't get pulled up. He's seen his mate do it. He's decided to do it.
3-2.
Brilliant. He started it 2 weeks ago when he was trying to tell everybody that Steve Bruce was the first person to play Joe Linton in midfield. Bullshit, Kieran. And now we're talking about moving on from Newcastle and developing as a player. What did you do when you moved on from Newcastle, Kieran? Is part of player development putting a player from your local rivals in your Ferrari and sticking it into the swing bridge? Is that player development? Or is it sticking two fingers up at Sir Bobby Robson on the training ground, you ignorant little prick? That's what I'd like to know, what Kieran Dyer should think about player development. Whoever thought it's a good idea to give him a platform and use him in the media wants absolutely shot with shit, because it's just rubbish, absolute tailless rubbish coming out of his mouth. And he's just going to make things up as he goes along, just like his little mate, the goldfish bull Janice, does on the BBC. He's like a Janice light, and he's not even clever enough to be that.
What do you really think about Kieran Dyer's opinions?
Sorry.
George, I mean, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I mean, yeah, he's just a clickbaiter, isn't he? And I mean, he's not.
Well,
he
is,
he's not a very good one.
Well, I wondered the bit I seen on the telly if he wasn't actually drunk. Actually, he was so incoherent at times. I mean, the other annoying thing is that when Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank said something positive and the commentator said something positive about Newcastle, he jumped in with something negative, and all that stuff about Botman. I mean, where does he think he's going to get with that? Absolutely rubbish. And the other thing he needs to remember is the day he, I agree with you, him and Boyer should have been on the transfer list the next day when they fought on the pitch. But the other thing that he died the day he refused to play for Bobby Robson. When he refused to play on the right wing for Bobby Robson, that should have been the end of his career for me. Not just the end of his career at Newcastle, but his end of his career, full stop. Because if he cannot do what he's told for somebody like Bobby Robson, then he cannot do it for anybody. So goodbye, Kieran. That was the end of him for me. He could have scored a dozen hat tricks. I still wouldn't have praised Kieran Dyer after that. He just mindless. And if it's about getting more work and getting clickbait and all that sort of rubbish, well, you're going to get it, Kieran, but it's not going to be very pleasant, because lots of people like us and in Newcastle particularly are going to tell you what we really think, and you're going to have to get used to it, Bonnie lad.
I've said it before and I'll say it again as well. Kieran Dyer, he was only a good player in a poor team. And when he was, I just never rated him. He was injury prone. He basically made a lot of money at Newcastle. He should have a lot more respect for Newcastle.
Well, sorry, Steve. He for a long time he had a free ride because of the shin splint issue on his legs. You remember he had these shin splints all the time, and they couldn't understand what it was all about. And Newcastle spent a lot of time and money trying to put that right for him. And that's the thanks we get. No, sorry, Kieran.
We spent as much time in the training room and, with the doctors trying to get himself fit rather than in the nightclubs and bars in Newcastle with his pals, then maybe it would have been a different story. But that's all we're going to say. Full time at the Emirates, Arsenal 3, Manchester United 2. Newcastle United stay third on goal difference ahead of Manchester United, and that's another good result for us. I know Keith Patterson believes that we're going to win the league, but let's be perfectly honest. Arsenal, Man City are way ahead of us, I'm afraid, in that scheme. And Champions League will do us personally. Chippers, I had seen this once, and I've seen it twice in the chat now, but I do intend to talk about it. So I'll come to George first on this one. He says, personally, I would drop Wilson and play Isak. Do the lads agree? George, what's your thoughts? Because goals is what we started the show about. We're not getting the goals.
We're not. But Isak, to me, is not a back to the defense sort of forward. He likes to move across the line. He doesn't want to be a target man in the way in which Callum Wilson can be. If Callum Wilson's having a bit of a bad time at the moment, then I think we've got to be patient with him, because he's run his legs off forward in other circumstances, in my opinion. So no, I wouldn't be dropping Callum Wilson for Isak. If there's another alternative to play alongside Isak, if we buy somebody then that's a different matter. But I see Isaac playing along the line, but not as a target man. Not as a target man.
Okay, Mitch, your take on the Wilson Isaac. Is it time to play the two of them together?
Well, they showed they could do it against Fulham, but I know that was under very different circumstances.
Yeah.
I have a personal theory about what Wilson's dealing with, and it would explain why he seems to be a little off at the moment. And I think if it's a real issue, then Eddie Howe Shirley's the man to manage it properly. And if he feels that Wilson should be starting, he does look a little out of sorts. But maybe, again, we've touched on it before, as a team, are we not going through a little bit of a tricky period at the moment? And sometimes the first person that shows that is the guy putting the ball in the back of the net. That if the service isn't quite where it has been, and if some of the movement isn't quite where it has been, then he's going to look a little bit like an island at times. And I think that's the one thing I think from yesterday. Perhaps he did look a little isolated on occasion. And is it time to think about tweaking the formation to work Isaac in with Wilson to share some of the burden? Because isn't it wonderful to have those options to talk about?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I suppose. But I think I could see an argument for playing Isaac instead of Wilson, but I think then you also have to tweak the rest of the system with him up front because he is a different type of striker to Callum Wilson, and so would need to probably be thinking about how best to deliver the ball to him in that circumstance. But personally, he's still getting chances. He still looks a handful, and he still looks up for it. So the will's there, and it might just be he needs a lucky break. He maybe needs to put one in off a defender's backside or off his opposite ankle and into the top corner, Manuel Riviere style. It's just something to go his way and get a bit of a break to spark him back into life. It could just be something as simple as that.
Yeah, I quite like the suggestion by Craig, to be honest. I'd go 4-2-3-1 when the team sits in. Bruno, Longstaff, Almiron, Isaac, ASM with Wilson up front. Isaac in a free 10 role. And I think that's a right place to play him, Craig. I've got to be honest, because he does love running at defenders. He can't play when he's back to goal. I think it's a good suggestion. I think playing them both together would be good. I think maybe a lot of this will depend, of course, on whether Newcastle can bring in another player in the window, which we'll come to in the second half of the show. Kevin, what's your thoughts? Time to rest Wilson and give Isaac a show up front, or would you like to see the two of them together in a situation like Craig mentioned in the chat there?
Well, I think Craig's copying what I said a little bit because I went to the 4-2-3-1 or the inverted triangle in midfield, and you can still call it a 4-3-3. It just depends on which way you look at it. It's numbers on a page what the experts think it is. So you could still play 4-3-3 with Isaac in behind playing the 10, with Wilson doing the hard yards, if you will, and being that focal point just to relieve, like Mitch said, a little bit of pressure from not being so isolated up there. But I wouldn't drop him. I wouldn't drop Wilson. I would keep him in there just as your talisman. He's the main focal point of your forward line, essentially. But again, there is a place for Isaac in our shape, in our formation. Now, where that is, that's up to Eddie Howe. I mean, we're just speculating and coming up with certain suggestions where it possibly could happen. But I can see, again, depending on who you play, is it a 4-2-3-1? Is it a 4-4-1-1? What do you do? Again, it depends on how you look at it and what you say on a sheet of paper and from a formation standpoint. So I would still start him. Who knows what's going on with him? Again, confidence, just needs a goal, whatever it is. Don't care how it happens. Just, again, strikers fuel off of confidence and obviously service. So I think that just has to improve a little bit, in my opinion.
Stu, I'm not sure whether it's just him. I think the break certainly has given other managers an opportunity to look at what Newcastle are doing right and try to throw a spoke in the works. You know what I mean? And doubling up on Miggy, for example, you could all say that Miggy hasn't had the greatest of time. I mean, he had 2 shots yesterday, a goal where, before Christmas, they were flying in the top corner, but now they're flying towards the corner flag. So but he is getting marked heavily by other teams. People, we've got to adapt, haven't we? We've got to be able to adapt. We've got to have a plan B. And Eddie Howe did say at his press conference on Friday, that he wouldn't be adverse to doing it, and we're going to have, it's nice to have that option.
Definitely, we've got players to have that option as well. Regarding Callum Wilson, I'm with George. I would start him. He does a lot of work against the defenders that I don't think Isak would. And I don't think Isak's capable of doing it. He's a different type of player. Excuse me. But granted, I can see why people say he's not as sharp. But his supply line is becoming less and less. He's not getting involved, and that's up to the other players to bring him into the game. And if he's making these runs and he's not getting the ball, then the space should be there for others. And that answers the same for Mickey as well. If they're doubling up on him, then we need to be able to move the ball quickly across the lines to find the person in space and punish him that way. But with Callum Wilson, I think he has been isolated. It's like he has been ploughing a lone furrow by himself up there. And it's a lack of support. And maybe we're being too cautious about not conceding. And this can be drilled into them. They have to start defending from the front. But Callum Wilson, I think he deserves our backing for what he's done since he's signed for us. And hopefully he plays on Tuesday, next one, next two, and he gets his little zest back. But if Bruno doesn't have a good game, or Longstaff doesn't have a good game, it's not as noticeable as it is if it's a goalkeeper or a centre forward, because they're always highlighted their mistakes, or really highlighted on this. So Wilson, I really rate him, and I think he's been fantastic for us. And if things aren't going that well, and if it's confidence for strikers, it is for most positions, but strikers is essentially the run on confidence. If they were to drop him now, what would that do to him? So to me, keep playing him. He'll get his goals as long as he's getting the passes. And he hasn't had, although we've had all these shots, there hasn't been many chances created for him. He's still the best finisher we've got at the club. So keep him playing.
Yep. Okay. Get your views into the chat. We'll be back after the ads. A big thank you to all our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries, you can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation, one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK Coach Holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howie. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel. www.nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle. Okay, transfers. Barry's asking how long we think it is before Wood's replacement comes in. He thought he'd already be here. George, we've got faith in the owners. I think we expect someone to come in, don't we? Whether it's a forward or not, I'm not 100% sure. Whether it's a creative midfielder, but one would expect someone to come in. The news today about Darlow looks as if he potentially is going to be on his way to Hull City for the rest of the season, on loan. So that would be another one out. And strong rumours about John Joe Shelby potentially going to Besiktas, and whether that's a permanent deal or not, we're not too sure. But certainly looks like there's going to be movement in the next the next 10 days or so. Which
in fairness to the owners and the manager, that's the kind of whispers we were getting before the break even happened. That there could be some outgoings as well as incomings. I would like to see us do two things. One, get somebody to support Wilson up front, or be an alternative to Wilson up front, and get somebody in midfield that help Bruno and others with a bit of creative stuff. It could be somebody on the left or somebody down the middle to release Bruno a little bit. But they're the places I'd be looking. If you're asking for names, I really wouldn't even venture a guess, because some of the names that have been pointed in our direction, I'm horrified at. People like McTominay from Manchester United, for example. What the devil would we want that idiot for? I mean, do we really need that? No, I don't think so. And there's others as well that I sometimes wonder if that's agents trying to create a transfer or create a fuss with the team that the players are in, so that they get a pay rise or something. But it's certainly not the sort of player that would fit in our squad at the moment. So if James Maddison was available and we got him, I wouldn't say no to that. But I think I'd say what I've said on other platforms before about James Maddison. When I looked at it closely when they were talking about him coming, and I looked at his discipline record, he's got 5 bookings, not all for diving. And that's a bad habit to get into. Don't care how good you are. So yeah, I'd like to see a creative midfielder and a robust attacker who can take some of the weight off Wilson and help Isak to develop as well. Somebody who's a wood with a bit more mobility and an eye for goal would do me, I think. But asking us who, I really don't know.
Watching that Arsenal game, Mitch, and Nketiah, what a fantastic talent he is. And I mentioned to a couple of the lads today when we were chatting about who you'd like to see, I said the kind of player we need is a young version of Loic Remy. Somebody who comes in, hits the ground running and can score goals at this level. That's what we need, Mitch.
Mm. And you're right. I mean, we were rumoured to be sniffing around Nketiah at the start of the season, and then he was given a new contract at Arsenal. I think you have to look at the mechanics of the deals, and I think the Chris Wood deals maybe he's come out of left field, and that as a deal was too good to turn down, because we're looking for space and wages for FFP, because it effectively means Chris Wood was brought in to do the job of keeping him up, did the job of kept him up, and it'll have cost us by the time he goes to Forest permanently less than £10 million. That's smart transfer business. That's really smart transfer business. And yes, maybe it's caught them on the hop because they've allowed him to go because of the financial aspect. That's quite clear from Eddie Howe's comments in the press conference that the deal was too good to turn down and the player wanted to go. So everybody goes mutually happy with that. But I would be amazed if they don't look to replace Wood in one way, shape, form, or another. As well as them being working on other targets. And I'll say what I've said before. Everything's flexible. I think we'll be active in the window all the way up to the last few hours of the window. And they'll do the deals that they think are the right deals at the right price, and only those deals. And I don't think there'll be any panic buying. I think they'll have a handle on who they maybe are interested in to replace Chris Wood. And as we keep saying, trust the process. It's going so well so far, so let them get on with it. And we shouldn't unduly panic.
Kevin, transfers, ins and outs. I mean, there's obviously Chris Wood, which, was a good deal. Eddie Howe did seem to get, well, he said it came from left field, and he said there would be occasionally deals that happen like that. So he's been taken aback, but he did make no bones about it at the press conference on Friday that, he wants another player in and somebody who can hit the ground running.
Yeah, was it left field, or did he know about it all the way along and he was just playing the media for a fiddle?
Good point.
That's just Eddie Howe, how he's very astute and very clever at how he plays the media and what they want to hear, and just to fill their column space, I guess. But no, I don't know who, like George said, who to put your finger on, who you would bring in. It's, again, I would like a target man, a younger version of, I wouldn't say Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think his injury record is a bit suspect. But something of that ilk, who's got a bit of height, a bit of pace. But I think we'll have to go down the young road. Again, I couldn't put a name out there. There's that many, the transfer rumor mill is just rife. You just never know unless they're standing there in the Milburn stand, signed on the dotted line, then we can't really put names in the ring, if you will. So I don't know, really, to be perfectly honest. Just somebody has to come in just to give that support, because you never know with an injury to either or both at the same time, which would be catastrophic. So you're going to have somebody versus an ASM playing as a false 10, So, something will happen. Again, I'm not too sure who, but I can see some business being done.
Yeah, no, I think there will be, some business done. It will be the right business, though, at the right time. Stu, I mean, it's, it's definitely frustrated Eddie Howe yesterday, on Friday, at the press conference. I did think he did look a bit upset about it. Not as if it's been done without his say, because they do all talk about things. And by his own admission, it was a good, it is a good deal for the player as well as a good deal for the club. But I guess there is that nervousness about, well, will we get somebody in? Because, you've got yourself into a good position, and it doesn't matter how many times Eddie Howe says, I don't look at the league table. I just concentrate on each game. We all know he is looking at the league table, and we all know that he will know exactly where we are. But, he will want a replacement in. And do you think we'll get one?
Of course we will. I'm full agreement with what Kevin said there. There's no way they would have pulled the rug under Eddie Howe's feet like that. So though he said it left field, he's very, very consistent, Eddie Howe, in saying that he's got a duty of care to the players, and he puts that first and foremost. So if he had a choice, he wouldn't have sold Chris Wood if it was just out to him. But he's looked at the player thinking, right, you're on a good salary. You're not going to be playing that much. You're 31-year-old. They're going to give you an extra year on your contract. Right, it ticks a lot of the boxes, but that doesn't mean he wanted him to go, but he understands and was willing to let him go. For sure, that deal wouldn't have been done without his endorsement. So what we're looking for in the window, I touched on it earlier, we need someone who can pick the lock when these teams are sitting deeper and deeper and deeper. That's exactly what we need. And they've also, Darren Eales has said it, Ashworth said it, Eddie Howe said it. It's one in, one out. And if everyone's talking about signing players, there's only 25 men you can have in your squad. You need to get rid of some players that are in that squad to bring new players in. It's common sense, isn't it? So if two of them have gone already, that creates at least two spaces. But if the Shelby rumours are true, why would we want to sign someone who's injured? But let's say he goes. If he goes and Darlow goes, that's another 100 grand a week to go with Chris Wood's 100 grand a week off the wage bill. That gets you a top quality player. You know, it creates, you know, it creates the desire there for us to sign someone and have the fluidity to say, look, there's 100 grand a week for you. Come and play in this team. The team will evolve. There will be a different formation. He hinted that at his own press conference on Friday that at Bournemouth he played a 4-4-2. You know, but there's, to want of a better phrase, he's more of a thinker than a tinker. You know, he doesn't like to tinker with his teams. He thinks about it, and he's very methodical in his process. And I think there'll be a change of formation come the start of next season. And that's where we might get a 4-2-3-1. He just doesn't believe he's got the personnel there to play that way at the moment. And if it's not broken, why try and fix it? And he's got a formation that other people are trying to knock down. So keep it going with Eddie Howe. And I still think we'll get at least 2 signings in before the window closes. Yeah. I generally do.
Interesting to hear Eddie Howe saying that the person's got to be fit and ready to ready to hit the ground running and be able to play, from the off when he comes in. And then James Maddison was selected for Leicester at the weekend. Am I reading too much into that, Stu?
No, that's exactly what I said, didn't I? I fully believe that they want him. But I would imagine they'd be scared to set a precedent as well. If they then overbid for him, that then becomes the norm. Hold tight against Newcastle and they will pay over the odds. So, and that's the reputation they desperately try to avoid. So we've talked about it last week on the financial fair play. They've got millions they can spend. But it's whether they've budgeted for certain amounts at certain times. But they can go and buy a Maddison and pay cash for him if they wanted, full amount. Now, something like that, if it's top loaded with more money up front and spread over a period of time, might be of interest to Leicester because financially they're unstable at the moment as well. So I'm a great believer that Maddison would add so much to this team, especially where the season's progressing and the way teams are sitting back against us, saying, come and break us down. It's just another person there who can slide that pass, and it also stops the opposition now. As you said, they used to double up on ESM. Now they're doubling up on Mickey. If you've got too many potent forces going forward, you can't double up on everyone, can you? So they need someone in that position. Joe Willock, yesterday, I thought he was very, very good. I think he's in a rich vein of form. His pace he's got pace to burn, hasn't he? The way he's running down that line. Now, if he could start putting balls in, getting the crosses in on a regular basis, he could be the answer to that position. Going forward. And if that means Joe Linton has to miss out if they bring in midfielder, then that's the decisions Eddie Howe's going to have to make. But it's nice to have these choices. You like to say, we're not hoping, can we get a draw at Palace, and then be grateful for shithousing ourselves to a draw at Palace and being so happy about it. We've went there and we've dominated them. And that's with this team. So I don't think the team's going to change that much, but I think you'll bring someone in as cover and someone in to start. And ease them in like you did with Bruno.
Okay, finish off tonight with this person, Claire Bolden. Sorry, George, not Claire Bolden. Anthony Gordon.
It's all right.
There is a similarity, but Anthony Gordon seems to be splitting opinions before it's even been confirmed that Newcastle are potentially looking at him again. It was mentioned at the start of the season that Anthony Gordon was a possibility of coming to Newcastle. What's your thoughts on him, George? Would you like to see him in a black and white shirt? I know we're talking about disciplinary and diving and stuff, but he's a young player. It can be changed. He can change that side of his game. Eddie Howe's already proved it with some players that he can change players.
It's interesting that somebody put something on, was it Twitter or Facebook, where there was somebody sitting in front of Amanda Staveley at the game yesterday, and it looked exactly like Anthony Gordon. It could be a lookalike for Friday. No, if he's at the right price, he's a young player that's worth a chance. Because I firmly believe that if they think they could get rid of some of this silly things he's been doing at Everton, and there's lots of people doing. Excuse me, folks. There's lots of people who could, thank you, be doing silly things at Everton. He wouldn't be alone. If they're confident they can manage that, then I'd have him in a heartbeat, to be perfectly honest, from what I've seen of him in matches now. But that's the big if, isn't it? Is whether that's ingrained already or whether it's something that they can deal with. I suspect, judging by what Eddie Howe and his team have done with other players, they probably could manage him because he's at a younger age group. So I wouldn't say no to Gordon, but there are others I think who I would rather see before him, like Maddison, for example. Sorry,
is this like a is this an alternative? Do you think if they don't get like a player that they want, is he further down the list? I mean, he was clearly on the list at one point.
I don't know. I think he might actually just be a little smokescreen name that they're happy for the press to bandy around and for us to talk about while they're getting about the business in the background and be done. I would have thought the situation Everton are in financially, if we've got any serious aspirations to sign Gordon, the bid would have been made and accepted and done. Does he pass the no dickheads policy? Not really sure. There's word from Everton that he's fallen out with the Lampard, although that doesn't sound very hard at the moment. That just sounds like an absolute festering cesspit of emotion in Goodison Park at the moment, and it reminds me of us in certain times in the 80s, and we know how that plays out. It certainly doesn't end well. Does he have talent? Undoubtedly. Does he have sides to his character that people don't like? Yes. But it always seems to be forgivable when he's our shithouse. If he's somebody else's shithouse, it's a problem. But when it's ours, it's not a problem. And there's a number of players like that you could say the same thing about. It's part of the game. It has been for a long time. Talent, yes, he fits some of the profile of the kind of younger talent that we're looking at. I think it depends on whether Eddie Howe feels he can work with a lad and shape him and develop him if he is indeed one of the targets on the list. I'm not convinced he is.
Yeah, I think Red Herring is perfect. I think you're right. Alan, good evening, mate. Thanks for jumping on the chat. Kevin, Anthony Gordon. I mean, I remember going. I remember watching him. Down at Goodison. Was it last season? I think it was down there when he got the late. Whenever he came on, he's a nightmare to play against. He's all over, and I guess the one side of his game which would fit in with the team is his shithousery, as we'll call it. You know what I mean? He does annoy players. He's the kind of he's like a younger version of David Speedy. He's the kind of player you love to hate when he's on the opposition.
Exactly, and I was going to go a little bit more my generation with Alan Smith. He's one of them ones. He's that mould of that Alan Smith of love to have him in your team, but when you play against him, you know what you're going to get from him. But I haven't seen enough of him, to be honest. Probably could be a flash in the pan. But, if the deal's available and it's the right price and it's the right thing to do, I'd love to have him in the team. But I think Eddie Howe will be able to mould him into how he wants him to play. But for me, to go to Stu's point, what he said earlier about unlocking doors, and I was watching the Man City game earlier and he came on, I'll go like a Bernardo Silva. Granted, he's a little bit older, but he's not getting game time at Man City. He's not getting game time there, but it's just something different what he brings to the. Well, I love to see that type of player. I'm a Peter Beardsley fan. It's that type of mold. Yeah. Just somebody like that, just alone to the end of the season. So going back to the Golden thing, I'd like to see him, but again, it's got to be at the right price. We're not just going to throw money at a young kid who could be like everybody said, a complete dickhead and upset the dressing room.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't know what he's like. We can only make the judgment of what we see on the pitch. He could be a great kid in the dressing room. He might be quiet. We really don't know. I've got to be honest. For me, I'd like to see James Maddison. I've said this since the day of the takeover. I'd love to see him at Newcastle. I think he'd fit. But then some people will point to the fact that he's had some issues off the pitch as well. He's had them. He's a bit of a star player and this, that, and the other. But we don't know. It's what's led in the media. Ward Prowse looks a consummate professional. he could be like Oliver Reed off the pitch. We don't know at the end of the day. But Ward Prowse would be maybe number 2 if we couldn't get a hold of him. You look at the Trossard deal. We've been linked with Trossard by the newspapers constantly for a £12 million fee. He's now gone to Arsenal for £27 million. Ruben Neves, Tom Dixon saying in the chat, there's another name that we're getting linked with. Lots of people linking us with lots of players. George mentioned it before. Agents are sometimes the ones who are putting the names out there. But we just sit back and we'll wait. Stu, Anthony Gordon's what we're talking about. In a black and white shirt, would you like it? Could you see it?
In both camps. When he first came on the scene, I was really, really impressed with him. If we go back to last season when we beat them 3-1, he was their standout player. And he was a young lad. He was head and shoulders above anyone else in his team. His passing, his confidence, his vision, his touch, everything was great. And you start thinking he could be like the new Bellamy for us. If you talk about Alan Smith, as Kevin mentioned, he could be the new Craig Bellamy. But for me, he's more of a summer signing because it gives us time to work with him and get him into the squad, get to know his nature and everything else. I think he's a bit of a risk in January to drop him into what is a tight-knit squad. So I think it could just be paper talk or it could be agent talk, trying to force Everton into a corner and give him a new contract. But I think we can do without Gordon until the end of the season. And if they go down, we'll get them cheaper anyway if we're that inclined to buy them. There's no need to panic buy with someone from Everton at the moment because there'll be like a proper fire sale if and when they get relegated. You'll see little arms will go to Tottenham or even Chelsea or even Man United if they doesn't sign his new contract. They'll all jump ship. And he's the one that would probably want to stay with him being a local lad, but it looks like he's getting a bit of a rough ride at the moment. And he didn't start yesterday, did he? He came off the bench.
No.
And when you're in a relegation battle as they are, and the importance on that game yesterday against Moyes, you've got the Moyes and Lampard, Everton, West Ham connection there. You think you'd want to start your better players. So that indicates all's not well behind the scenes with them. And we don't need to inherit someone else's problems just yet.
No.
Good point. Well made.
Steve, sorry.
Go on, George.
I just drifting back to Callum Wilson, if I might. Callum Wilson, I've noticed, is one of a number of players who went to Qatar and since they come back haven't been like they were before they went away. And in fact, there's one big standout, and that's Calvin Phillips at Manchester City, whose manager said he wasn't even fit when he came back from Qatar. And there was a number of things that I observed when they were training, which bothered me slightly. And one of them was, I don't know if you've seen the picture where they were coming off the pitch and going into the undercover out of the sun, and they had these big fans and they were blowing watery mist in these fans. That worries me. Has nobody in the England squad ever heard of Legionnaire's disease or pneumonia or anything like that? That worried me greatly, and I may be barking up the wrong tree or talking out the top of my head as usual, but it does worry me. And I think he hasn't been 100% since he came back, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, we'll never know what people have got unless somebody comes out and says, I had this. We know that ASM was ill. We know that, he was ill as well. Callum Wilson, it could just simply be to do with that, But, listen, Wilson will come good. Strikers do go through bad runs. And ultimately, Callum Wilson is no different. Carl, thank you for that. He says, given Barca's financial situation, we need to tempt them with an Ansu Fati bid, at least a loan bid. Marcus Llorente from Atletico Madrid would be a solid one as well. Rushford looks all right, says Craig. Callum Wilson was off the pace, says Andy G. Yesterday, not his usual self. It's going to be interesting to see who will bring him. Got 9 days, I think, now until the transfer 9 or 10 days the transfer window closes, and Newcastle will move. There is no doubt about it. They will act, and as I say, we're starting to see players go out. which of course will clear the way. So we'll wait and see. Been a great panel tonight. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, George, for joining the professionals tonight.
Pleasure. Honor to be with you, lads.
And I will be back tomorrow with the fans forum at 6 o'clock when Kevin might go for his hat trick. He'll have been on 3 nights in
I'll get the match ball.
Kevin might want a night off. Okay, thanks.
I've got nothing else to do until I start coaching again, so I'm doing that.
You're more than welcome. All right, great stuff, lads.
Good luck to Newcastle on Tuesday as well for the 3-1.
Good luck to them on Tuesday.
Yeah,
but we'll be speaking about that tomorrow and on Tuesday. Take care, lads.
Cheers,
lads.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.